So to continue our series on healing yourself spiritually, today we're talking about metaphysical treatment. Now all this that we've been talking about for 5 weeks now has been leading up to this point. To do a metaphysical treatment simply means know the truth. It's pretty simple. Know the truth. The hard part is to get the illusions out of the way. So, in order to know the truth, we've got to know the nature of God. And we talked about that back in the beginning of this series. The nature of God is perfection, omnipresence, omnipotence, omniscience. Pretty well covers it. Pretty well covers it. If you have an ailment, the truth of that is God is there, not the ailment. God is there. Okay. We talked about Andy a little bit earlier this morning. God was working on that, man. That was happening. And the more we can see that truth, the more that we can know the truth that all is holy, that all is spiritual, that all is of God, the more we can realize that and let go of everything else, healing occurs. Healing occurs. We use our human mind. The way that we balance the nature of God, the nature of man, is we use our human mind to recognize the nature of God. This is very important. The nature of God is true whether we want to believe it or not. The nature of God is true whether we accept it or not. The nature of God is the only truth. Anything that we try to add to that or take away from that is the illusion that we have tricked ourselves into calling reality of this world. We get so caught up in the material part of things, we see our physical bodies as our reality. Our reality is that we are spiritual beings. We are one with God. We are expressions of God. These bodies are vehicles that we have chosen to use on this plane to expand our experience. And we've just forgotten that these bodies are a tool. They're not the truth. They're not the whole. So knowing the truth is knowing all of this, is bringing it all together. Jesus knew this. Jesus knew that he was a child of God, and being a child of anything, you are part of that thing. You look at your human parents. You are the culmination of your human parents' genes coming together, creating you. No matter what you think of your parents, no matter how much you love them or hate them, you are part of them. We are part of God. Our physical being is part of God. Each cell of our bodies has the essence of God. Jesus knew this. Jesus understood the nature of God. He knew that he was a child of God. He knew what was true to him. He knew that he was one with God, that he was an expression of God, no ifs, ands, or buts. And Jesus knew that everyone else is as well. He understood this principle. What you believe is true about someone else is also true about you. You think about that for a moment. If you look across the room and you see someone and you think or believe something about them, is that something you want to believe about yourself? We've got to check into those things. These beliefs that we see out there. There's a mirror image that happens, or a mirror principle that happens on this earth. That happens everywhere we look. When we look out and we see something in somebody, if we like it, man, that's pretty cool because we've got it too. If we don't like it, we've got it too. We may not express it in the same way, but the driving belief system behind that holds truth. And this is all going to come around to metaphysical treatment in just a moment. So, if you're looking at somebody that has just done a dastardly deed, and you're thinking or judging or holding opinion about that or whatever the case may be, look within yourself. How does that hold true in you? Again, you may not express it in the same way, but you may hold a judgment that does something similar. It can come at you in all kinds of different ways. Jesus knew this. Jesus knew that what we see in others is what is true in us. We can use that to the good. We can use that to look to others that can inspire us to live a greater expression of life. We can look to others to inspire us to heal ourselves. Right over there. Good example. We must see the world and others from the spiritual standpoint. Knowing that this is true, if we continue looking from an egoic state, all we're going to see are egoic qualities in others, which empowers those qualities in us. When we look from the spiritual state, the spiritual standpoint, through the eyes of God to each other, we see spiritual traits. We see beyond the egoic state. We see into heart. And we see the truth of others. And in that, we experience unconditional love. Someone told me the other day that, or not the other day, it's been a while, but they told me, but I was reminded of it the other day. As you're driving down the road and somebody cuts you off, that first thought is, to get after them. Those words want to come out, and you want to get after. You want to honk your horn. You want to speed up, cut them back off. All kinds of things go through our minds when somebody does something like that. And it happened the other day. Somebody just about had a big white truck in their back seat. They were so close, and the first reaction was to really get angry and get after them. And then this thought popped back in my head. I said, "No, bless them instead." You send a blessing. You send a prayer that they arrive wherever they want to go safely. You send a prayer that whatever it is that's causing them to be in a hurry is okay. And when you do that, you're not only sending a healing and loving and divine energy out to that person, everybody around you is getting it. Everyone around you gets this. And this is what is known as a metaphysical treatment. Okay? We're going to bring it into a more individualized state here in just a second. But this in itself is a metaphysical treatment, because what we're doing is we're seeing truth, we're seeing divine, we're seeing God in everyone around us. And we're sending and expressing God to everyone around us. That's what's meant by a metaphysical treatment. Now we're going to take it a little bit deeper. We must remember, in a metaphysical treatment, we must first acknowledge God. We must first acknowledge the perfect creator of all. That's step one. If we can't get there, if all we can see is the illness or the ailment within ourselves or within others, and let me tell all of you, each one of you can be metaphysical healers, and it's a choice. And it's a mindset. It's a consciousness. Whether you want to believe it or not, you're already doing it, but you can do it consciously. Okay? And we'll get more into that. But first, you recognize whatever that thing is that's presenting itself is just an illusion. God is the only truth. That's number one. God's creation, we have to see God's creation as perfect, eternal, whole. What is there here that God did not create? So we see all as whole and perfect, divine. From there, we get into the truth that God is infinite, ever present, back into the omnispresent, omnipotent, omniscient. We get back into that. We know that God is everywhere present. There is no division. God is part of this thing that we might be seeing as an ailment. But when we look deeper and we look only to God, we realize the ailment is an illusion. Our physical body may be feeling it, but our spiritual body does not. Our spiritual body, our spiritual truth, is the only truth. It's the only reality. We've got this mixed up. You know, we feel so often that we're human beings having a spiritual experience, or trying to be spiritual, trying to learn how to be spiritual. The truth is we are spiritual beings having the human experience. Now, if you're healing yourself, if you're doing a metaphysical treatment on yourself or others, the one thing that you want to remember after you recognize God, after you acknowledge God and the truth of God, the most important thing you can remember is you do not have to know how it's going to happen with your leg. All I can say about how that happened is God worked. Okay? I can't tell you what had to happen inside your leg to make it all come together, but I know that it was all directed divinely. So when you're doing a metaphysical treatment, you don't have to know. The only thing you have to know is God is present, and God is perfect. The creation that God made is perfect. And anything we see other than that is an illusion. Giving a metaphysical treatment is not an attempt to change anything. This is very important. I'll use my hip for an example. If I go into a metaphysical treatment and try to change the status of my hip, I am getting in the way of divine presence, getting in the way of the divine work that can happen. And let me rephrase that a little bit. I'm not necessarily getting in the way of the divine work that can happen. I'm getting in the way of my realization of the divine work that's happening. So we do not go into a metaphysical treatment trying to change anything. We go into these treatments knowing truth. That is our job, is to look beyond what's presenting, almost denying what's presenting, and look to truth. Look to wholeness. I'm going to read from the book by Arthur Ingalls that kind of summarizes all of this. And it says, when we are doing a treatment, we begin with God. Then we go to the realization that God's creation is whole, complete, and perfect. We recognize that if this is true, then this appearance or belief of an injured back has no reality. It is not true because it is not of God. The injury is not of God. What happens to us humanly is beside the point. That is of the material realm, not of God. Okay? That's what this metaphysical treatment is all about. Treatments are unfoldments of God's oneness, completeness, mercy, healing, and power. I love that. I want to read that again. Treatments are unfoldments of God's oneness, completeness, mercy, and healing. Love is healing. In 1 John we read, perfect love casts out fear because fear is torment. Fear is a belief in a power apart from God. So the next time you find yourself fearing something, I want you to remember that. Fear is a belief in a power that's apart from God. Well, when we first started this talk, and ever since, well, even before we started this series of talks, but we talked about the omnipotence of God. Omnipotence. That is power over everything. That is power everywhere. There can be no other power other than God. So when we have a fear, We're experiencing a belief in a power other than God, which means we're seeing false evidence as a reality. False evidence appearing real. False evidence. It's not true. It's not true when we grasp hold of the omnipotent God. When we embrace that power that's within us, there is no fear. There's no reason to fear. The reality of existence is total spirituality. Our existence can be completely spiritual. This does not mean we're not going to have the human experiences. That's, some teachings say that's why we came here. We've been perfect spirit since before time was thought of, and we will be perfect spirit long after we leave this plane. Some people believe that we chose to come here for this experience. So we still get to be the human. That's why we came here. We still get to have fun. We still get to enjoy love. We get to enjoy the touch of someone else. It's not that we're giving all this up. We don't have to be a monk sitting in a cave on the top of a mountain to be spiritual, to live a spiritual life. We don't have to be the Dalai Lama who is surrounded by people telling him what to do all the time just to be the holiest person on earth according to some beliefs. I love this Dalai Lama because he has fun. He has fun, he interacts, he embraces love. He's great. I love him. And he has a great message. So to give you an idea of what a metaphysical treatment is, I want to read one more thing out of the book, and then we will bring this to a close. We can think of a treatment in this sense, whether you're working on yourself or someone else. We think, who? It's the first question in your mind, who? The answer is perfect man. Doesn't matter who's sitting in front of you. The truth of that person is perfect man. We may not be able to see it immediately. We have to know that, and then we'll be able to see it. The next question is what? The image and likeness of God. This helps us get to perfect man. If we realize this is the image and likeness of God sitting before us, or if we're working ourselves, we have to believe that about ourselves. Where? In the infinite Spirit. So it's perfect man in the image and likeness of God in perfect spirit. Now, Arthur Ingalls says that perfect spirit is also heaven, which I love, because if heaven was out there somewhere, or if heaven was a place that we have to go to once we pass, once we transition, that tells me that there is separation from God. I do not believe there's separation from God. I think it's absolutely impossible to be separate from God, so heaven is available right here, right now. Why? To express God. When you are treating someone or yourself, and you can see the truth, you can see God within, you can see the perfection of that creation, you're expressing God. When? Eternally. This treatment is eternal. How? And this is the big one for most of us. We always want to know, how are we going to get this done? How? With God's love. I love that, because it's literally, there's only 3 words here. I am not paraphrasing. With God's love. And how true is that? How awesome would life be if we just kind of cut out all of the stuff that we try to add on and realize that it's just with God's love. To prove to you that anybody can do this, there was a story written up by Arthur that a man was dealing with a physical ailment, and he came to an apartment of a metaphysical treatment practitioner. Knocked on the door, and the little girl opened the door, and think the story said she was about 10 or 11 years old. She opens the door, and the man says, "I need to see your mother. She's a practitioner. I need to get a treatment." And the Lord, "She's not available." And the guy just really got mad, and he just comes after her pretty good, and I got to see her, got to see her, and got to see her. "She's not available, but come in. I'll help you." 11-year-old girl. So the guy walks in, he sits down, and she sits down with him. She hears some of the stuff that he's got to say, and then she does her treatment, which she does kind of a silent treatment. Is her practice. And the man felt better immediately. He's like, "Oh, wow, great." Yeah. So he left, and so he tried several times. He finally caught up with the little girl's mother, and he told her what the little girl had done, and just thought that was amazing, and wanted to thank her. And so the mother gets off the phone, and she goes into the little girl. She said, "Well, how did you do that?" And the little girl just looks at him. She goes, "Well, I just knew God couldn't create a mean man like that, so we just prayed about what he could be." We all, when we know the truth of God, and when we know that the truth of the other person is God, we can move through any barrier, whether it be somebody cutting us off in traffic or somebody coming to us with cancer or with any other illusion of imperfection. Their body may still have to deal with some of that, but these treatments, the proofs, the examples that are shown in this book and other studies that I've seen, this isn't the first place I've seen this, show immediate healing in many cases. One, for instance, was a farmer was out in the fields working on his tractor and stepped off. Somehow he broke his leg. And he was able to work his way back up into the cab of the tractor, and he was coming back in, and he was just focusing on the perfection, the healing, on God. By the time he got to the hospital, he was completely healed. It happens. And it happens when we see goodness and kindness in God, in ourselves and with others. When we realize that what our bodies are going through are not truth. Our truth is that we are beautiful, spiritual beings. We are expressions of God, and nothing at all can deter that. Nothing at all can stop that truth. So focus on that. Next week we're going to be talking about spiritual treatment. And I believe, I don't know, that chapter looks really good, so I might have to take 2 weeks, but we're going to get there. So if you would, join me in prayer as we wrap this up. Father God, we thank you for the truth that is us, the truth that you are within us, that we are simply expressions of you, that when we let go of all of our human beliefs, all of our beliefs in the material world, we get back. We bring back that realization that we are one, that we are expressions of you, that nothing has the power to harm us, that nothing can get in the way of us being the light of God. We thank you, God, for this truth. We know that when we simply accept the truth of you in us and the truth of you in all, we can heal this world. We look forward to the day that we need not heal, because all is well. But until then, let us be expressions of you. Let us be resources that bring healing about. We thank you, Father, Mother, God. Amen.